During the Yom Kippur War of 1973, Israeli tank crews burned alive en masse. This nightmare forever changed the nation's attitude toward the lives of its soldiers. Why did boasted American and British machines become mass graves? The answer lay in Soviet missiles. A wire-guided Malyutka missile slams into a modified hull. Steel shatters. A white-hot copper jet floods the cabin. Panic erupts. Men choke on the suffocating stench of burning metal inside the tight turret. Fire devours oxygen. The crew perishes. Hundreds of blazing steel coffins choked the Sinai desert in just 48 hours. 40% of armored forces turned to ash in the first days of the conflict. Commanders relied on imported relics. American M48s and M60s drove directly into the meat grinder. British Centurions held the open flanks. The military even fielded upgraded World War II veterans. Mechanics packed the Super Shermans, designated M50 and M51, with high-velocity cannons and modern fire control systems. Cannon upgrades meant nothing. These aging beasts belonged to a dead era. Soviet infantry rockets effortlessly pierced thick Western armor from 3 kilometers away. Half a century later, the nightmare has returned to the shattered streets of the Gaza Strip. Even the ultimate fortress cannot promise a safe journey home. 95% protection against rockets means nothing. It fails against an ordinary explosive device planted under the belly. A 60-ton Barak tank creeps through a dense labyrinth of ruined concrete. Then, the earth erupts. A massive explosive charge detonates directly under the tracks. The blast wave instantly shatters the floor of the fighting compartment. The shockwave pulverizes everything inside. A modern underground bomb holds the equivalent of dozens of kilograms of TNT. No bottom armor in the world can absorb that kind of kinetic fury. The illusion of invulnerability evaporates in close-quarters urban combat. Enemy infantrymen emerge from tunnel shafts to strike at point-blank range. A deafening roar echoes through the smoke as fighters plant raw explosives directly onto the cold steel of the turret. Above them, armed drones drop munitions right into open hatches or engine bays. Technology meets raw desperation. Advanced sensor suites and automated defenses struggle against this intimate, chaotic violence. Brutal city clashes have crippled hundreds of these heavily armored vehicles. The thick modular plating does its job most days. It absorbs rocket fire and prevents the catastrophic ammunition detonations that vaporize older Soviet designs. Recovery teams eventually tow many shattered hulls away. Most crewmen crawl out of the burning wreckage alive. But survival is never guaranteed. The metal holds. The crews still die. Every casualty hit an exposed nerve, because by the mid-70s, the military faced a brutal demographic deficit. How do you fight when every soldier is worth his weight in gold? The command took desperate measures. Officers pulled the 5th man out of the Super Shermans. The bow gunner seat remained empty, 5 down to 4. This grim arithmetic allowed 4 surviving squads to assemble 1 extra crew. Flesh became the ultimate bottleneck. Factories weld new armored hulls in a few weeks, but training a competent tank commander requires years. Iron was cheap. Blood was finite. The demographic dead end forced generals to value human life above the metal. Yet their soldiers still fought inside imported steel. Then the diplomatic doors slammed shut. The British government completely refused to sell their new chieftain tanks. Isolation set in. The military lost its foreign lifeline. They had a shrinking pool of veterans and no modern armor to protect them. The High Command ordered engineers to design a fully homegrown combat vehicle. The first blueprint broke every rule of armored warfare. Engineers took the engine and shoved it to the very front. Cold metal now shielded warm human flesh. The responsibility for these lives fell on a hero of the 1967 Six-Day War, General Israel Tal. He completely flipped the global tank philosophy. Mechanics lowered the heavy engine block directly into the forward hull. A harsh metallic clank marked the installation of the transmission right in front of the driver. They sealed the crew behind a massive barrier. This block created over a meter of dense steel. It stood as a solid wall between an incoming enemy cumulative charge and the people inside. If a Soviet-made missile pierced the front plate, it would choke inside the diesel cylinders. Fire would swallow the engine. The vehicle would die, but the men would walk away. The name Merkava is a reference to an ancient chariot where the draft force takes the hit. Metal could be forged again. One living crew meant more than 10 destroyed hulls. General Israel Tal knew the harsh reality. If the engine took the fatal hit, the 4 tankers needed a safe exit. Moving the power plant forward left the entire rear section of the hull empty. How to evacuate the wounded under heavy fire? Through a unique rear hatch. The heavy thud of a steel door swinging open. A dusty battlefield behind the tank. Troops called it the bird's door. It turned the vehicle into a psychological lifeline. 3 rescue mechanics defined this empty space. First came escape. A burning crew bailed out through the back. They used the massive hull as a shield instead of climbing through roof hatches directly into enemy fire. Second came salvation. Tankers stripped out the ammunition racks. The bare belly held 4 to 6 infantrymen. The tank became an armored ambulance. Crews ran medevac missions. They pushed into kill zones to extract downed pilots while the main turret kept firing. Third came endurance. Soldiers loaded fresh ammunition straight through the back door during active engagements. Nobody stood exposed on the roof. Internal steel partitions vanished entirely. The whole formed a single continuous space that completely eliminated the isolation of the driver from the rest of the crew. Inside this 60-ton fortress, the engineers of 1979 forged unprecedented conditions for their men. The Middle Eastern sun shows no mercy. Inside an armored hull, the temperature can easily exceed 50 degrees. Sweat blinds, lungs burn. Rapid human exhaustion kills a soldier faster than enemy shrapnel. A drained tankist is a dead tankist. While crews of other vehicles lost consciousness from the heat, an air conditioner operated here. Cold air blasted through the fighting compartment. Pure survival. The 4 men, driver, gunner, loader, and commander, stayed sharp. Their minds remained completely lethal. Outside, the vehicle looked entirely alien. Sharply sloped armor plates. A squat turret shoved far back. 60 tons of uncompromising metal. The beast carried a 105mm rifled gun. Deep in the rear compartment, the crew managed 62 shells. An entire arsenal ready for war. A 900-horsepower engine pushed the heavy tracks forward. It lacked the raw agility of Soviet machines. Speed was secondary. Protection dictated every single blueprint. They waited for the first clash. Air conditioning held back the desert heat, but the ultimate threat was the 62 shells resting directly behind the crew. Where to put this deadly ammunition? Engineers packed it strictly in the rear hull, keeping explosives far away from human bodies. In the Soviet T-72, the autoloader rotated right under the tanker's feet like a primed bomb. When an incoming round pierced that hull, the resulting detonation hurled the 12-ton turret dozens of meters into the sky. The explosion vaporized the crew instantly. Zero chance. Israeli designers refused to build a disposable steel coffin for the state. They wrapped the vehicle in heavy modular armor, using thick, spaced plates that mechanics could swap directly on the battlefield. But the true innovation lay within the hollow, self-sealing reservoirs filled with diesel fuel and drinking water. A copper cumulative jet burns at over 3,000 degrees Celsius, slicing through standard steel without resistance. Here, that molten stream pierced the outer layer, but immediately bogged down inside the dense liquid, stopping completely before it could touch the men. Ammunition remained the final threat. Tankers locked the shells inside fire-resistant containers equipped with heavy rubber seals. Whenever a loader pulled around, the thick steel latch clicked shut, isolating the propellant from the living space. Footage of torn-off T-72 turrets will become a symbol of catastrophe for decades to come. The Israeli design guaranteed a fundamentally different outcome. When enemy fire breached the inner hull and ignited the powder, pressure valves forcefully vented the scorching blast wave outward. This architecture of survival faced a bloody trial in the summer of 1982. Lebanon became the ultimate testing ground. 0 dead tankers. Even after direct hits from Syrian T-62s, the new armor clashed against Soviet-made T-62s and T-72s. Steel shattered under heavy fire. Rockets and mines ripped through the tracks. Several Israeli machines burned down to the chassis. But the philosophy held. The iron absorbed the killing blow, allowing the men to climb out of the smoke alive. Tal's vision worked. Flesh survived the fire. Yet combat exposed a fatal flaw. A narrow gap remained beneath the rear of the turret. One well-aimed rocket could pierce the ring, instantly tearing through the men inside. Engineers responded with a brutally simple fix. They hung curtains of heavy steel chains ending in iron balls directly under the overhang. As the massive tank rolled forward, the heavy steel chains clanked loudly against the hull. The relentless metallic rhythm announced its approach. These weights detonated incoming warheads in the air long before the lethal jet could touch the main armor. The crew survived. Mechanics dragged the torn chassis back to the depots. Almost every crippled machine returned to the front line within 48 hours. Heavy chains deflected hits in the early 80s, but by 1989, the rules changed. Hezbollah militants switched to mass ambushes. They struck from the shadows. Urban warfare broke the tank crews. Volleys of Soviet missiles pierced the flanks. The psychological exhaustion of waiting for an invisible strike paralyzed the men. How to stop a missile before it touches the armor? The trophy system took on this task. The Mark III rolled out into this nightmare. Engineers mounted a devastating 120mm smoothbore gun. But brute firepower could not cure the terror of blind spots. The real shield came from code and sensors. A rocket launches from the concrete rubble. The radar detects the incoming warhead. The system fires an explosive counter-munition. A violent blast rips the air just meters from the hull. The active protection reacts in fractions of a millisecond, faster than human synapses can fire. It guaranteed a 95% survival rate. Digital processing finally replaced raw steel thickness. Yet the crippling claustrophobia remained. Commanders had to see outside. The Iron Vision helmet shattered the physical barriers. The commander pulls down the heavy visor. The suffocating deaf steel walls instantly dissolve into transparent panoramic screens. The harsh stench of sweat and engine oil lingers inside the cabin, but the deadly blindness vanishes. Artificial intelligence scanned the battlefield around the commander.